Welcome back. This is the Sunday edition of the South African Morning. I'm Gareth Edwards. Doctors Beyond Borders is condemning big pharmaceutical companies for maintaining secrecy around COVID-19 vaccine negotiations and agreements. It has far-reaching consequences, nonetheless more for us here in South Africa. MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières South Africa Regional Advocacy Coordinator. It's Claire Waterhouse joining us to unpack this. Claire, morning to you. It's always a pleasure speaking to you. Taking a look at your website this morning, one of the issues, we'll talk about secrecy in a moment. Let's talk pricing for a moment. South Africa, according to the website, is being vastly overcharged for the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. It's being produced by the Serum Institute of India. This is the one that's supposed to arrive here in the country tomorrow. And the allegation is that we're being overcharged.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. And unfortunately, that is what we're seeing at the moment. South Africa has been charged almost 3 times more than what the EU is paying for the very same vaccine. And the EU is saying that's because AstraZeneca is saying that's because the EU participated in the research and development of the vaccine. But that's actually true about South Africa too. The problem is that we don't really know what's in either of these deals because there's no transparency whatsoever, lots of secrecy surrounding these deals, and it's clearly not working out well for anyone.
Well, this is a global pandemic, which it obviously is, Claire. I mean, why do you think that there's so much secrecy around this? So we've been hearing talk that it's a global effort, that all countries should be helping each other, etc. But it doesn't seem like the pharmaceutical companies want us to know what they're doing.
Absolutely, and that's the big problem we're trying to talk about at the moment, because there's been a lot said about the vaccines, as we all know, all over the world, but very little of it has focused on what big pharma corporations are actually doing. They haven't changed anything about their model of operations for this once-in-a-lifetime, well, let's hope it's once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic, and that's really what we would have expected. The whole system is shrouded in secrecy. There's a lot of power dynamics at play, and the companies are simply refusing to share the information, the knowledge that they have around the innovation, and refusing to be open about prices that they're charging different companies. This isn't a new problem, unfortunately, so much so that South Africa backed a resolution at the World Health Assembly in 2018 arguing that there needs to be price transparency when it comes to medicines and vaccines. And then in October last year, South Africa was leading the charge, or still is leading the charge, with India and a few other developing countries at the World Trade Organization to argue that in these exceptional circumstances, there needs to be a waiver on intellectual property aspects of these things so that governments do have the policy space to be able to work on providing more vaccines and more COVID-19 tools and medicines for their populations.
So the costing of this is obviously what many people are going to be watching closely, Claire, but I can't help but also wonder about the question about funding, especially this Serum Institute of India, where we're getting the serum, the first batch for South Africa for tomorrow. Wasn't it the Bill Gates Foundation that funded, I think it's almost $300 million, I think you've got it on your website as well, to scale up the manufacturing? Then if we look down the process, why would this organization be hiking up the prices if they've been given the money to produce the vaccine? It doesn't make sense, and I'm no economist.
It doesn't make sense to any of us. It's a fundamentally unjust system, and it's not correct the way that it's been allowed to operate so far. So you're 100% right. Big pharmaceutical companies often, in fact almost always, receive huge amounts of public funding to scale up manufacturing and to do the research that they do. So in this instance, yes, absolutely. We've seen that the Serum Institute, which now has the license to manufacture the AstraZeneca vaccine for us, that received $300 million from the Gates Foundation. But AstraZeneca itself received another $383 million from a U.S. Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness, as well as a U.S. research body, that was more than $1 billion. So the question we're left asking is why then they're getting all of this money to do it, and yet somehow they still have the right to control supply, to control pricing, and to control the innovation. They don't share any of the innovation so that any of us or any countries could then take up that manufacturing. We're essentially paying twice, and that is a fundamentally unjust system, and we need to take a stand, which is very difficult because of how much power these companies wield. South Africa itself has said that they're really can't break these non-disclosure agreements, for example, that are creating the secrecy around the issues in the contracts in South Africa, because they're scared that they will lose those contracts, those signed deals as a result. And that is impossible to imagine. But these pharmaceutical companies are backed by wealthy countries, and it's fundamentally we're calling it vaccine segregation rather than vaccine nationalism, because it's so much more than just nationalism.
There's a lot of questions that need to be asked about this, Claire. Vaccine segregation, I think it might be exactly the way to phrase this. Claire Waterhouse, thank you very much. As you can hear, lots of questions still to be asked. She's from MSF Southern Africa. She's the Regional Advocacy Coordinator for Doctors Beyond Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, if you prefer that particular acronym. So questions being asked about the funding and the cost. Why is South Africa paying more for the vaccine than our European counterparts? No doubts we'll be asking those questions to those in power here on ENCA.